Folks, there's been a lot of concerning stuff happening all throughout the country recently. And one of the things that came across my desk happened here in Seattle a few days ago. I decided I wanted to share it with all of you to give you an idea of what happened and why it happened, since there's a lot of misinformation or misunderstanding about this incident.
You gotta stand, you gotta stand, you gotta stand, you gotta stand. Oh my God.
Looks bad, doesn't it? And there's also this Reddit post here that says Seattle PD hit a 21-year-old female directly in the chest with a stun grenade. Volunteer medics and protesters rushed to her aid. After being carried away, she was unresponsive and had no pulse. They revived her, and she remained in critical condition. In that Reddit thread, there's a post by the river in Egypt, and they say the last 2 days I have been volunteering as a medic at the protests on Capitol Hill. Yesterday evening, when the police decided to disperse the crowds, I was treating a young woman in our first aid center who had been sprayed with pepper spray. The SPD used flashbang grenades close enough to us that I felt it against the back of my neck. Tonight, my partner and I were treating a young woman in her 20s who had taken a police projectile to her chest. We had her on a cot and she was struggling to breathe. The police advanced and we were attempting to evacuate her using the cot as a makeshift stretcher. The police threw at least 2 and possibly as many as 4 flashbang grenades inside of the small inside of the small area of our first aid center while we were trying to retreat. With the help of other protesters, we carried the cot for several blocks, trying to get out of the way of the police onslaught and to a place where we could treat her safely. Shortly after we managed to find a place where we felt safe enough to treat her, she stopped responding and we lost her pulse. We initiated CPR, and after a minute or two, she gasped for breath and became responsive for a short time. That cycle repeated itself more than half a dozen times in the following 15 to 20 minutes. We called 911 immediately we called 911 immediately after the first time we lost her pulse and were informed after some time that an ambulance was not able to reach us. We managed to figure out a civilian vehicle to transfer her to the ED and were able to deliver her to the ED with a pulse. I was honestly terrified the entire time we were going to lose her, and even now I have no idea if the ED was able to stabilize her. I can only hope that we were able to get her there in time. It also says, all this, however, is just to explain the urgency of my request. The police are absolutely aware of the location of our first aid center. Last night, I was upset that they overran our location and put myself and the other medical volunteers at risk. But tonight, we almost lost a patient, a young woman in her early 20s, because the police continue to refuse to acknowledge or respect the literally life-saving work that we are trying to do. And then the rest of it there, you can read it while I talk. It doesn't look good for the police reading this. However, not all of this is what it seems. First, the grenade that was used is called a blast ball, and we'll discuss that in a bit. Second, it didn't hit her directly in the chest, something we'll discuss in a bit. Third, this is a single report from an unidentified individual. Is it real? Is it not real? That's something that I think a lot of people fail to address. You see something on the internet that validates what you believe, and you don't do any fact-checking. Now, I did fact-checking. I went into the River in Egypt's profile in Reddit, and I looked through their comments, and I tried to figure out where they were, see if I could figure out how I could talk to them. When I was first trying to find them, I went into their profile, and there was another post that was posted. It was a story. It was a short story that was written, which appears to be gone now. Yeah, that's just a picture of a cat. Instagram is the mass market democratization of attention whoring as a profession. Okay. All right. And then, folks, I need your help. And this is the article about volunteering as a medic. I don't know where the other story went. I read it and thought, wow, this is well written. It wouldn't be difficult for someone to make up a story and make it sound real based on the quality of their writing. Unfortunately, obviously, I can't now prove that it existed. So take my word for it or don't. Now, those posts aren't terribly helpful for fact-finding. I was going to send them a message, but when going through their comments, I discovered that their primary medic station is at 10th and Pine in the Rancho Bravo patio, and that people could feel free to come down and someone will get them sorted out. This was for someone requesting information on how they can volunteer as a medic. So I went there. I went into the Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone, also known as Chaz, to see if I could find that medic. Now, the medic station was exactly where this guy said it would be, on the patio. But there weren't any good signs that said it was a medic station. I mean, there were signs. There were small little signs, but nothing terribly significant. They didn't want me filming the place, so I can't show you all those signs. I did manage to get a picture of this that says no photos, no videos, respect the safety of our medic volunteers. That was not a big sign. It was about yay big. I talked to one of them, and I said, hey, can you confirm the story that was posted on Reddit about the woman being hit in the chest with the flashbang? And he said, I wasn't here. I heard the story as well. I don't know how accurate it is, but I do know that they performed CPR on the female who was struck by the flashbang. He also confirmed that the police did throw flashbangs into the little medic area. Unfortunately, I was not able to return to see if I could find the medic at a later date. My commander, because remember, I've been doing that National Guard thing where I hand out food to families in need, and I'm incredibly happy to be doing that. My commander has barred me from returning because of the potential danger to myself. Obviously, I can't say no, and I have to agree with him. I was able to establish that there was some truth. Yes, flashbangs had been thrown into that area. However, it didn't look like a medic area. There were some small signs. I don't blame the police for doing it. So let's look at the claim that the grenade exploded against her chest. I've taken the footage, I've stabilized it, and I'll be running through it very slowly. So let's check it out right here. All right, stabilized. You can see it a little bit better. Let's rewind that. And we can go through it frame by frame. Oh, look at that. Well, that's interesting. Do you see this thing right here? That is the grenade. You can tell by the arc that it was thrown. If it was shot out of a launcher, it would have been a much more straight trajectory. So that is a thrown grenade. You can see it come down. It's there. It's there. It's there. It hits her in what looks like the thigh. Her chest is here. We can see the grenade impact right there. So first of all, we know that the claim that it hit her chest is false. All right. It's right here. So it's about 6 inches away maybe from her when it first goes off. Definitely not her chest. All right. It lands there and then explodes. All right. For those of you who are saying, no, that's not a flashbang, it's a smoke grenade. I beg to differ. All right. Now, these blast balls, some are inert, meaning they just release a bit of smoke, and some actually release CS powder. So I'm not sure which one this is. I've never used a blast ball. But she flees. This guy backs up, which is exactly what they're designed to do, is make people get away from them. Right? She falls to the ground. She's picked up. More grenades are thrown. Okay. So we know that it didn't detonate against her chest. So we're already sort of discrediting this idea that it hit this woman in the chest and caused her to have a heart attack. But what got to that point? What caused the police to think that they needed to throw these blast balls into the crowd? Let's check that out, because this very short clip doesn't really tell us anything, does it? I have here a video by Omari Salisbury, and he was filming this from a different angle. He does a pretty good job of explaining what's happening while he's filming. So, let's check it out.
Get back. The police have issued a warning. They're telling people to step back. They're telling people to step back.
So already we know that the police have been telling people to step back. The crowd was responding with no, you step back. And I want to say thank you so much to the person in my Discord who went through this and gave me the timestamps when all this happened. That saves me 2 hours and 25 minutes, which is incredibly helpful, and thank you so much. I will be jumping to those timestamps. Feel free to watch this video on your own to gain whatever context is not found in this video.
I'm going to again ask that people in the crowd move back away from the officers. Keep distance.
As you're saying, move
again,
back.
For your safety and ours, we want to make sure that everybody stays safe.
Sounds like a very friendly order, right? The police doesn't appear to be them trying to escalate anything. They're saying, for your protection and ours, please step back. And a pretty friendly tone. All right, we're about 35 minutes and 50 seconds into this video, and we hear this.
There was a line,
Yeah.
then there was a
The
flower
subject is
line.
over to the north side of the line with the foil shining the bright light in the officer's eyes. I'm going to ask you to not do that.
Somebody shining a light in the officer's eye.
All right, bright light in the officer's eyes. That's a fair request. Hey, please don't do that. They're just standing here. What are they doing? They're standing there with shields. They're not doing anything. Nothing. So I don't want to hear in the comments, oh, but the police were being aggressive and they were antagonizing the crowd, because you'll hear, if you watch this, it's the crowd antagonizing the police, and the police are not responding to it. They respectfully ask, hey, please stop shining this light in our officer's eyes.
He's asking to not shine a light. The original line.
It's an officer safety concern, and I'm asking you to not shine the light in the officer's eyes.
All right.
That seems like a pretty reasonable request. You wouldn't want the officers shining lights in your eyes. Let's keep going to 39 minutes in.
You continue to creep closer to the officers, continue to put the light in the officer's eyes. I am asking you to maintain a safe distance for your safety and ours. I am asking you to maintain a safe distance. If everyone could just take 3 steps backward so we can maintain a safe distance.
That seems fair. Hey guys, it's been, however long, 5 minutes, 4 minutes. That light's still in our face. Can we please not? Also, you're starting to inch closer. Do you mind backing up? That's a reasonable request. Let's keep going.
Let me show you guys.
A safe demonstration so everybody can express their views.
Take 3 steps back. We'll take 3 steps back.
Please take 3 steps backwards so we can continue this in a safe manner for your safety and ours.
I can't agree more. They're saying, look, we want you to be able to voice your opinions, but please do it once you take 3 steps back and stop shining lights in our officers' faces. Why are people upset about this?
I'm asking you to stop shining the foil and the light into our officers' eyes, and for you to take 3 steps backwards to allow a safe space for everyone to demonstrate and for our officers to remain safe as well.
Officers again asking.
You're being very polite about it. And they're met with the chant, you step back. All right, 42 minutes now.
Guys, this is the
Still,
closest.
Police Department again. I'm trying to communicate with you throughout the night to keep this a safe event. I've got the demonstrators on the south side of the line that are within about 3 feet of our officers. I'm not sure what your intention is. I'm not sure if your intention is to walk up toe-to-toe with the officers, as I said. We are trying to get you to step back so we can maintain some safe distance here for everybody involved. We want this to stay a safe demonstration. As I said before, I'm not going to let you move through this line. Take step back.
So the protesters right here, they're saying that their objective is to walk peacefully through the streets. Of course, right behind us over here is a precinct.
So, protesters want to keep walking through. The police are saying, no, you can protest over there. You cannot march down this way. This is where the police precinct is. The concern that they had was that the protesters would try to damage the police precinct. We've seen this all over the country elsewhere. It's a pretty reasonable fear. Now, you might be saying, well, they have the right to march down the street and protest. Well, not necessarily. They're blocking the street right now, which is technically a crime. And usually when you protest, you would get a permit and say, hey, city, we want to use this street. We'll be in the street. Traffic will be blocked. Here's our permit application. The city can't deny the permit application based on what is being protested. However, if it unreasonably interferes with activity within the city, for example, if you block off a hospital so there's no way for an ambulance to enter, that's obviously going to be an issue and that's not going to be allowed. So the fact that they're in the street in the first place, great, you've got your street, but the city doesn't have to allow you to use every street that you want. So here are the police saying, no, feel free to do what you're doing over there, but we're going to stand here, and you're not going to march through this line. They're being very polite about it. They're respectfully asking people to step back and protest elsewhere. I don't see a problem with that.
There's a precinct. Behind these officers here are several rows of National Guard, and there's armored personnel carriers. We've seen the crowds closer to the police. Earlier in the week or last week, there was a metal barricade in between. There's no barricade here. Guys, this gap right here, this is it between the protesters and the police.
So we're about an hour and 2 minutes in. An interview is taking place. However, the police are saying something pretty important in the background. I'm going to narrate what they're saying. Feel free to watch the video on your own and confirm this.
Department.
And they're actually holding
We just had someone throw a glass bottle and hit one of the National Guard.
This is a peaceful protest.
If this is a peaceful protest,
We're not throwing items at the police
we're not
officers.
throwing items at the police officers or National Guard. Yet someone saw fit to do so.
Do not throw items at the police or the National Guard.
Do not throw items at the police or the National Guard. If you are an organizer of this group, I'm asking you.
And whoever threw the glass bottle at National Guard that is simply standing on the line, I would ask that you have that person moved.
Whoever threw the item at the National Guard standing in the line, I ask you to have that person removed. So the officer on the loudspeaker, on the megaphone, is saying, look, someone just threw a glass bottle and hit one of the National Guard, which, by the way, is assault, okay? That's an illegal activity. That can get your entire protest shut down. You've hit one of our National Guard guys. Whoever's organizing this protest, which, by the way, there wasn't really a solid leader. And if you watch the video, they do comment on that. They're like, look, no one's actually in charge here. So they say, whoever's in charge of this, please remove them, because it's going to ruin your entire peaceful protest. That's not a peaceful act. And if this protest isn't peaceful, we can shut it down. So they give this warning, and they say, don't let it happen again. They gave a warning. Someone threw a glass bottle, and the police were like, okay, no, it's fine. Look, don't do it again. You've had your warning.
They have them leave. We are trying to keep this a peaceful demonstration.
They're trying to keep this a peaceful demonstration. You've done that for hours.
Everybody an opportunity to be able to get their views out.
We're trying to give everyone an opportunity to get their views out
And do so safely.
and do so safely.
Yet we have someone in your crowd,
Yet we have someone in your crowd who just threw a glass bottle and hit the National
I'm
Guard.
asking that you work with one another to identify that person
I'm asking that you work with one another to identify that
All
person
right, man.
and have them
Be safe.
leave your group.
and have them leave your group. That's
Our
fair.
officers are holding their line. You have continued to move closer from the original barricade. Move
back over
closer
there?
from the bicycle fencing.
Please,
Move
I'll
closer
go.
towards them, and now someone has thrown a glass bottle at the National Guard. I am asking you to not throw any items. If you continue to throw items, I will declare this an unlawful assembly,
Boom.
and I will issue a dispersal order. This is a warning. Do
It's a
not
warning.
throw items at any of the officers or the National Guard.
Pretty simple, right? Hey, don't throw items at us. We're just standing here. Cool. So the officer is threatening that, look, if you keep throwing stuff at us, we'll declare this an unlawful assembly and we will order you to disperse. So what happens if they don't disperse? Well, we've got RCW 9 Alpha .84.020, which is failure to disperse, which states a person is guilty of failure to disperse if he or she congregates with a group of 3 or more persons and there are acts of conduct within that group which create a substantial risk of causing injury to any person or substantial harm to property. All right, so you've got a protest that's more than 3 people, right? There are acts that create a substantial risk of causing injury, glass bottles, right? Oh yes, but the police are wearing protective gear. Okay, cool. You're still throwing items that can cause damage, and not all of them is protected. Then, of course, if you fail to disperse after orders to disperse have been issued, that's a misdemeanor. You can go to jail for that. It's an arrestable offense. All right, we're 1 hour and 8 minutes in. People are still advancing towards the police. They're touching their shields. The police aren't happy about this. And you have this, I think it's one of these females here that is trying to antagonize the police. Not a great move. Let's check it out.
What are you mad at me? Are you scared of me? You're scared of me. I'm 5'2",
That's all for peace.
120, yeah. This is disgusting.
Why? Why would you be like, oh, you're scared of me? Do something about it. I'm 5'2", 100 and whatever pounds. Like, I'm not a threat. The whole way that it's being said, like, you're trying to get the police to do something. Don't. Have your protest. I love the idea that people are protesting. Don't do this. All right, this is about an hour and 12 or 13 minutes in. Wait for it.
Again, I'm going to ask that for your safety and ours, the people take a step back. The people take a step back and create some space. I'm not sure what your agenda is to get toe-to-toe with the officers.
Here's a thought I just had. Everyone expects police to de-escalate, but why don't we also expect the protesters to de-escalate? It's the protesters who are advancing on the line, who are being very aggressive with their words and, in some cases, actions. They're escalating this. Why don't we have the expectation of them de-escalating? Why does it have to be the police who are literally just standing there? Why do they have to be the ones de-escalating? Why not the protesters? Just a thought. Ruminate on that.
I'm asking you to take a step back for your safety and ours.
Again, I'm saying please step back.
It's very close quarters here, guys. Like, in some cases over here, less than 2 feet.
All right, we're about an hour and 29 minutes and 30-ish seconds.
Conscious people out here, they be on me all the time, man. Like, oh, they're not worried about. Hold on.
You're going to see something thrown right around here, I think.
Hold on. We got some movement down there on the right side. We got some movement on the right side. Projectile just came over.
You see that right
Something
there?
just came over.
Let's see if we can see that again. It comes
We got some
real
movement down there on the right side.
horizontal.
We got some movement on the right side. Projectile just came over.
Oh, it's tricky to see. There's, I'll see if I can find another angle of it. I think I have another video that shows it better. But police respond with OC spray because you're assaulting them. Makes sense, right? And now the crowd, which has gotten too close,
Something just came
is
over.
being hit with it.
There it is.
Yep.
Mace is out. Hold the umbrella.
So the umbrella's useful against mace. However, if you do that, that's a problem. What you're telling the police is you're going to fight, right? You're not willing to disperse once this has been declared an unlawful protest, a riot, an unlawful assembly, whatever they declare it as, right? This is just going to escalate things because once you're no longer allowed to be there, you're no longer allowed to be there. It works to an extent.
A public safety order to disperse.
Not against the
command all
blast
those
balls, though.
assembled at 11 and Pine to immediately disperse.
All right, so they were giving the orders, disperse. At 11th and Pine, disperse. They've already given the warning, don't throw things, or else this will happen. This right here will happen. They had that warning. Someone didn't listen.
Leave this area. If you do not do so, you may be arrested or subject to other police
So CS gas, blast balls.
Other police action could include the use of chemical agents or less lethal munitions.
Boom. You've been warned what will happen if you stay, right? Leave, or you may be subject to less lethal or chemical agents. Okay, everyone should be aware of what's going to happen now.
May inflict significant pain or result in serious injury.
May inflict significant pain or result in serious injury. They've given you the warning. They've told you that being there is now illegal. Everyone there now knows what happens if they stay and what they may be subjected to. If they stay in that area, that's their choice.
Or result in serious injury.
This part's important.
If you remain in the area just described, regardless of your purpose, you will be in violation of city and state law.
Ho! Regardless of your purpose, if you stay in the area, you'll be subject to city and state law, the Municipal Code of Seattle and the Revised Code of Washington. So if your medic station is in that area, Well, you better start treating people somewhere else. I'm guessing they didn't start treating people somewhere else. That's part of your problem right there. You as a medic, as a real medic or a fake medic or someone giving medical treatment, you don't have any special authorization to break the law. So some people have claimed, but the Geneva Convention protects medical personnel from injury, right? You can't target them. Great. Well, I mean, the very first thing the Geneva Convention is relative to the protection of civilian persons in time of war. This isn't a war, but let's not let that stop us. Let's keep going. All right. So, Article 1, the high contract parties undertake their it doesn't really matter. Article 2, in addition to the provisions which shall be implemented in peacetime. Oh, okay. So there is a peacetime section. The present convention shall apply to all cases of declared war or of any other armed conflict which may arise between two or more of the high contracting parties, even though the state of war is not recognized by one of them. Okay, neat. That's actually pretty interesting. The Geneva Convention is pretty long, and feel free to read it on your own time. But let's see what the legal personnel in charge of HG.org think about this. They've got more training on interpreting these sorts of things, so I'm going to defer to their expertise. Notably, the Geneva Conventions do not apply to civilians in non-wartime settings, nor do they generally have a place in dealing with domestic civil rights issues. Those who cite to the Geneva Conventions to support arguments regarding prisoners' rights, civilian rights, or other matters are usually well off base in their arguments. Anyway, let's keep looking into this.
Remain in the area just described. Regardless of your purpose, you will be in violation of city and state law. The following routes of dispersal are available.
Oh, they're told where to leave. That's actually pretty nice.
On Pine, southbound on 11. Disperse now.
They're not dispersing. All right, so this continues for a bit. Let's see, about 1:57. We see fireworks being launched against the police. Yep, there's one. There's another one. There's another one. All right, obviously not a great move. Here's the part where they mention the woman who took the flashbang to the chest, which we already know it was the thigh, and it exploded on the ground next to her.
That's it. Somebody took a flashbang to the chest.
In a white Volvo. Sorry, a white Volvo. Flashbang to the chest.
They took a flashbang to the chest, and the medics pulled him over and took her to house.
And she was taken to Harborview. So was she not taken to the tent first? It's not really clear. I mean, they didn't move that far back. So I'm not exactly sure where exactly this is happening. I know this is definitely in the area that Chaz is now. I think the medic tent was literally here. No! Put your medic tent a little bit a ways away. I'm not telling you not to have one. I'm telling you don't put it directly in the path that the police are going to take. Of course, going to be rolling their flashbangs at you, or their blast balls. Don't be absurd. That's just poor planning. Come on, people. So let's check out the Wikipedia article on blast balls. A blast ball, also known as a tear ball or rubber ball grenade, is a ball-shaped, rubber-coated, less lethal hand grenade designed for police and corrections applications. A blast ball is similar to a traditional flashbang grenade in that, when detonated, it generates a loud noise and bright light. In addition, however, a blast ball will also release a chemical irritant, either OC gas or CS gas. Blast balls can be used against aggressive crowds during situations in which rioters significantly outnumber police or prison guards. In this application scenario, they are intended to frighten away and disperse casual rioters or those who have been sucked into the contagion of the crowd, allowing police or prison guards to close with and engage the remaining hardcore element. It worked. We saw in the video, the flashballs went out, and most people dispersed. The hardcore element, the criminal element, remained. The ones who were willing to say, I'm ignoring your dispersal order, which is a crime, we already established that, and we're willing to fight back. Once those flashballs get out, guys, if you don't want to be arrested and charged with crimes, that is your time to leave. So are they safe? Well, Wikipedia covers that in their safety and characteristics section of the article. A 2015 lawsuit by a woman in Seattle, Washington. Hey, That's the same location as the incident I'm talking about. Alleged shrapnel from a blast ball penetrated her leg. Seattle Police Department has said tests show that a blast ball detonated at contact range against ballistic gel fails to produce trauma or tearing. Here's where the source of that comes from. Lawsuit: SPD recklessly targeted volunteer medics at May Day protests. This woman has this picture of this injury on her leg. It doesn't look good. 2 volunteer medics say Seattle police injured them without cause and suppressed their First Amendment rights when they were hurt during the May Day anti-capitalist protests this year on Capitol Hill. This was 2015. They filed a lawsuit. They were part of a peaceful demonstration that turned violent. Drukowski says in the lawsuit that she identified herself as a medic during the protest with fluorescent pink tape shaped in a cross on her back and arms. That may not be good enough. I'm not sure about the legalities of that, but if everyone was doing that, how do you know who the real medic is? And do you actually have any protection that wouldn't be available to the general public during a riot as a medic? Question to ask. I'll try to look into that. Things to consider. Near the Montana bar at East Olive Way and East Howell Street, she heard someone call for a medic and crossed the street to treat the person, court records say. Just before she reached the patient, she was hit in the leg by a blast ball, which detonated against her body, she claims. The shrapnel penetrated her leg and caused burns. Shortly thereafter, she was hit by a blue-tipped impact sponge from a 40mm launcher, causing her to fall on the curb. Yeah, those sponges, they'll knock you over. Although she was nonviolent, not interfering with any police activity, not ignoring any police order, and acting as a medic, the officer decided to inflict pain on Drukowski. Her or his shooting must have been deliberate. Let's look at that lawsuit. Drukowski versus City of Seattle. First day of May, or May Day, has long been associated with demonstrations, protests, and civic unrest. For the past several May Days in Seattle, peaceful marches during the mornings and afternoons have been followed by violent rallies staged at night by self-proclaimed anti-capitalists or anarchists. Okay. Consistent with this pattern, on May 1st, 2015, 2 events involving thousands of individuals occurred without incident during daylight hours, but a crowd of roughly 700 people who gathered around 6 o'clock p.m. at Seattle Central College and then marched without a permit through the street of Capitol Hill eventually grew unruly. Shocking. Plaintiffs J. Frankie Drukowski and Aaron Donnie Clark were injured during the course of their participation as street medics in the unsanctioned evening protest on May Day 2015. In this action, plaintiffs have sued the City of Seattle and the following members of the Seattle Police Department, and then it lists all the people they sued. The core issue in this case is the use of blast ball grenades. A blast ball grenade has a standard military fuse known as an M201A1 fuse. A blast ball ignites in 2 stages. After the pin is pulled and the lever is released, phase 1 of the ignition process supplies just enough energy to eject the fuse and all metal components from the rubber grenade. We saw that. We could see when the ball bounced off the female's leg, there was a flash. And then when it hit the ground, it went boom. So, if we keep reading this, it says approximately 1.5 seconds later, during phase 2, the rubber grenade will explode at its equator. That's the center line. It goes boop. The only pieces that fly with any type of velocity are the 2 halves of the grenade, which are made of a very pliable rubber. SPD uses 2 versions of blast balls, one containing oleoresin capsicum, OC powder, the active ingredient in pepper spray, and one that merely produces a plume of smoke and is considered inert. Well, we already kind of discussed that, but there you go. Now you know I'm not just making stuff up. SPD personnel are trained to pitch blast balls at target location, not at an individual, in a bowling ball style known as low deployment, unless they are able to articulate a higher risk basis for an overhead throw or high deployment. Now initially when the blast balls came out, they were being rolled down the street in a bowling ball manner. That checks out. When the woman's hitting the thigh, that one was tossed overhand. So what required the overhand toss? Well, as we saw, the protesters were launching fireworks at the police, which is a bit of a higher risk for them. So it makes sense that they need to deploy in a different manner. You keep reading, the dispute goes on about, when the blast balls were used and what was actually used at the time that the plaintiff was hit. And we keep going, and there's an entire interview that is referenced. Well, not an entire interview, part of an interview that's referenced. It's a longish case. It's not, hugely long. It's definitely worth the read. I'm not going to read it all to you. You guys do it on your own. But what I'm trying to scroll to is that neither Lieutenant Yu nor Sergeant Bergman observed or received a report of anyone being injured by a blast ball. According to Officer Burns, in the 15 years prior to 2015, during which blast balls had been used, SPD had not received even one complaint of injury. Officer Burns operates a side business known as CRT Less Lethal Inc., which performs testing on various less lethal munitions to assess their potential for injury. In multiple tests in a variety of scenarios, blast ball explosions have shown virtually no potential for serious injury. Plaintiffs have preferred no contrary test results or expert opinion. So we can claim all you want. Well, the police investigated themselves and found nothing wrong. It was a police officer who ran these tests. Well, the plaintiffs didn't have any tests to counter it. And if there were tests to counter it, that's your chance to do that. But if the officers took the time to say, gosh, are these dangerous? Let's find out. Discovered, no, they're really not. And then used that scientific testing to determine that it was reasonable to continue using these devices. And no one's able to present anything to counter that at the time. That's unfortunate for the plaintiff. It's great for the police, though. So there are a lot of claims. There's assault and battery. There's intentional infliction of emotional distress. It goes on. But we also have excessive force under the 14th Amendment. The court stated even if plaintiffs could assert a 14th Amendment claim, it would lack merit. In the context of allegedly abusive executive action, a substantive due process claim is established only by proof of the most egregious official conduct that can be said to be arbitrary in the constitutional sense. The test, if something is excessive force, is no calibrated yardstick, which might mean one thing in one setting and something else in another. Essentially, each individual case is going to be different. They go on to say, when unforeseen circumstances demand an officer's instant judgment, as in a prison riot or sudden police chase, however, a much higher standard of fault than deliberate indifference must be shown because, on such occasions, law enforcement officers have obligations that tend to tug against each other. They must attempt to restore and or maintain order, while not exacerbating any turmoil, act decisively while exercising restraint, and make decisions in haste under pressure and frequently without the luxury of a second chance. I mean, there's tons of stuff in here. Please go through this. This is a fascinating case to read. Finally, at the end, it says the uncontroverted evidence leads to the contrary conclusion, as indicated by the cart instructor, Officer Burns, as well as the officers accused of throwing the injury-causing blast balls, Lieutenant Yoon and Sergeant Bergman. SPD personnel are trained to pitch blast balls at a target location, not at an individual. Moreover, in the various videos preferred by plaintiffs, officers can be heard clearly and repeatedly instructing demonstrators to move back prior to or in conjunction with the deployment of blast balls. Finally, no basis exists for believing that SPD has a policy, practice, or custom of using blast balls in connection with peaceful demonstrations, and plaintiffs' assertions to the contrary merely disputes SPD's view that the May Day 2015 protest had turned to a riot. Defendant's motion for summary judgment is granted as to plaintiff's Monell claim against the city of Seattle. For the foregoing reasons, defendants' motions for summary judgment, document number 66, is granted, and plaintiffs' claims are dismissed with prejudice, which means that they can't be refiled. In light of its rulings, the court need not and does not address the individual defendants' claims of qualified immunity. So there's a lot more stuff. There's tons of stuff in here about the legal aspects of what's happening. There's tons of information. I'm not trying to break apart the legal aspect of this or say this is going to be used in the future, or this is going to be used in this case that we're discussing right now with the woman being hit with the blast ball. What I'm trying to say is when you're looking at, oh, how dangerous is this? And you find this picture in this article and you go, oh, that's terrible. Well, understand that in the case, they basically established that, one, blast balls don't do this. Two, this wasn't likely to be a blast ball. It was probably a foam tip round. And three, even if it was a blast ball, the person didn't leave. You were told to leave, you didn't. That's really unfortunate for you. It's unfortunate that it happened. But what's really frustrating for me is that people are taking this and saying, look, police brutality. No. You were involved in a protest. The police made it very clear that they were supportive of that protest. But they were just not going to let people march down a certain street in front of their precinct. People got upset, and objects were thrown. Police said, don't throw objects again, or else this will be declared an unlawful assembly. An object was thrown again. Police declared it an unlawful assembly. Deployed the blast balls, said, everyone leave, go in these directions, or else you may be subject to additional force that may cause injury. Certain people didn't leave, to include the woman who was struck. She was struck after receiving that warning and after being in that area unlawfully. Someone lost my attention on Facebook. Don't worry about it. Where was I? She was warned that she might be subject to use of force. She was subject to use of force. While illegally standing in that area, she knew what was coming. It's very unfortunate for her. I believe she was released. According to that one Redditor's comments who deleted his story for some reason, maybe people were calling it into question. Like, wait, are you a storyteller or are you a medic? You can be both. But it certainly raises some questions. Anyway, at this point, I'm just rambling. I hope this gave more context to the situation. Feel free to make your own decisions. Maybe I'll do a stream about this later. But until the next time, be good, stay safe.